It's really interesting because it was all about like keeping non-rich white guys from hunting.
Wow. We're
That's
non-rich white guys.
that's
Is right?
Yeah.
Exactly, same here.
Yeah.
You
Dang.
know? And so, I
It
mean, but there's
worked.
also like,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to episode 120 of the Greenway Outdoors podcast. My name's Kyle,
I'm AJ.
I'm Ryan.
and we've got Hank Shaw, the always humble Hank Shaw, who would
Yeah.
only like to be known as a cookbook author, even though he's pretty well known, especially in the hunting and fishing community. And anytime somebody spends their entire fall at grouse camp cooking meals for people, you could start throwing around world renown because people come up all over to grouse hunt, you know? But that's how you spent your fall. Is that right, Hank?
well, that's how I spent 5 weeks of it. That's for sure.
Okay. Tell us about grouse camp. Tell us about the cooking.
It was interesting and difficult all at the same time. I mean, anybody out there who has worked lodge life, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, it's very unusual in the cooking world because most most of my career as a cook and most of people who out there who do this for a living, you work a shift, so you might work, lunch and dinner or breakfast and lunch, but you rarely do people, in real world work from 4:45 in the morning until about 8:30 or 9:30 at night.
Right.
And that it's a tough job. I mean, I think people romanticize it quite a bit, and yeah, it's fun. I mean, there was obviously some significant high notes, but it will wear on you.
Yeah, I would say that when we go to these camps, it's kind of rare for us to stay at a lodge, but we definitely have some experiences with it. And actually, we're getting ready to leave for a pheasant camp in just next week. Actually, we leave
Yeah.
Monday
Yeah.
in South Dakota. But when we go to these camps, it's like it takes a lot out of whoever's being the chef to be up that early to have food ready for you. Especially, God forbid, it's a duck camp where you got to be
Yeah.
on the water at 4:30. It's a 24-hour shift then, and then by the time everyone gets in, there's a big dinner and dessert and everything like that. Like you said, you're looking at 8:30 before cleanup's done. Then you go to bed and you got to be up in a few hours to do it again. And 7 days a week is quite the gig. Are you married? Do you have a family?
I do not.
Okay, smart. Okay,
That's
yeah,
probably a lot easier.
yeah.
to
That's
go
how
do
we get
that.
away. Well, that's how I get away with it. Ryan's married now.
I'm married.
The
No
young-
kids though.
Youngest guy on the team's married. He's got a lot of pets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like kids.
As a chef, my question was gonna be, when I found out that you did the grouse camp, I was like, that's like making it easy on them because to us, we think grouse meat is the absolute best meat on the face of the earth. We don't think anything's better. It's white as snow. The flavor's incredible, and you can do so much with it. Was part of the leverage to do grouse camp because you'd have an easy meat to work with?
No. I think more accurately, well, A, it was pretty close to where I decided to move, but B, grouse and woodcock they're really special birds, and the opportunity to cook them over and over and over and over again was really, it's not something I wanted to miss. And,
Sure.
I've cooked pheasants 10,000 ways to Sunday, and grouse are very similar in the kitchen, but they're different enough where you can do some things with them that kind of scratch the itch from a chef's perspective.
Sure.
Um, and the cool thing about being at the camp was, so I always use this example when I talk to home cooks who fancy themselves as experts on anything, right? Um, it's the leg of lamb test. So I once met a guy who said, I cook the best leg of lamb. I'm like, okay. Um, I probably cook it, every other month. It's a great thing. I love to do it. I'm very good at it. I'm like, good. I bet you are. And then he, as some men can be, he started to thump his chest a bit. And I said, well, I used to work at a restaurant where we cooked leg of lamb on the menu, and I cooked 8 a day for 7 months. And the sheer volume of doing something over and over and over and over and over again just makes you better because you
Sure.
see
Yeah.
the variables, you see what can go wrong, you see. I mean, I'm sure that guy was perfectly competent, but he will never see as many legs of lamb than I saw in less than a year. Like, he can be 70 years old and finally hit the number that I hit in 7 months. So that repetition, that there's a lot of people who talk about the 10,000 hours or whatever, and that's true. One thing I talk about, which is relative to grouse and upland birds in general, is plucking birds. I'm very good at it, and I teach people, anybody who wants to learn. I teach them how to do it. I've got YouTube videos and da 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 da. And they always come back and like, this is so hard. I'm like, the first 1,000 are hard,
Yeah.
and but it's this repetition. You get muscle memory. You've seen almost everything that there is to see in terms of what can go wrong and what can go right, that you just get a kind of an inner peace about, okay, here, this is what we're going to do. And it's very different from someone who just likes to do something but does it when they have the opportunity, rather than somebody who's for whom this is their job.
Sure. Sure.
So you originally, or are you from California and then moved to Wisconsin
Or
or
Minnesota.
No,
Minnesota?
I've lived in a lot of states. I
Okay.
was born in New Jersey,
Oh wow. Okay.
and I did live in California for 20 years.
Okay.
And I just moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, and just this fall.
What part of California were you in?
Sacramento.
Okay.
The actual town, if you're familiar with Johnny Cash, is Folsom, and I could walk around. Well, I could walk around that prison on Sunday mornings for exercise.
Oh,
And
that's pretty cool.
so people tend to know Folsom. They don't know all the other towns. But
So what you said, grouse and woodcock are pretty special birds. That's like I like upland hunting. I've got a German short hair, and we just got done with his first year, and he did really well. But living all over the place, New Jersey to California, all that, what drew you to grouse and woodcock?
I think I started hunting both of them when I first lived in Minnesota 20 years ago.
Okay.
At the time, I was a brand new hunter. I started hunting as late in life, and it's been over 20 years, but I have some gray hair in my beard, and the being in that forest, it's that environment. So for me, hunting is it's about the food, it's about the environment that you put yourself in, and that the deciduous forest is very special because there's not a whole lot that you hunt otherwise, at least in my experience. You hunt squirrels, you can hunt snowshoe hares, you can hunt grouse and woodcock, and then if the forest is right, you can hunt deer. But deer don't tend to like the grouse woods because it's too new. They
Mm-hmm.
hang out in it and they eat around it, but they don't really live there.
Right.
So um and squirrels tend to like bigger, older woods. But it's just an interesting environment to put myself in, because growing up in the East Coast, the Watchung Mountains were very close to where I grew up, and so that was my nature place. That was my natural spot. Was a forest that's very much like, and I'm sure there were grouse in those mountains, at some point in New Jersey, but there haven't been grouse in New Jersey for quite a long time. And I'm sure somebody listening to this right now will be like, I shot one just this season. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Right.
good for you. You got the last one. Um, but nobody goes to New Jersey to hunt grouse. So um, it felt like my childhood, and so I kind of crave that every now and again.
Okay. So there's a sort of nostalgic value that comes with it.
I mean, and the eating qualities of the birds is pretty special too.
So with woodcock, I've been trying to think of like it's like a darker meat. Would you say it's kind of livery? I guess I don't know
I mean, if you screw it up,
the
yes.
well, I mean, it's like like the culinary terms of like what type of meat that is. I wouldn't. I guess I don't know the
How would you
word.
describe it without using that word?
Yeah. Right.
So woodcock is they're an opposite bird, much like sharp-tailed grouse, prairie chickens, and a few other birds. Where in that their legs are white meat and their breasts are dark meat. So I have a tendency to pluck every single one. because A, they're pretty easy to pluck, and B, you're only allowed 3 a day and 9 in possession. So by law, they're a special bird, which made the grouse camp experience pretty interesting because I got the opportunity to cook dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them. So we did a few things that I wouldn't normally do because to me they're so precious. They are only cooked whole, and they're only cooked plucked because
Yeah, you don't want to
I
waste
had,
anything. You don't get that many.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
interesting.
But in terms of flavor, the breast meat is a darker meat, a little bit like duck, but it's very fine grained. So if you're familiar with doves or snipe or pigeon, it's very similar to that in the sense that it's a very fine meat, and this is where people bring the liver bit into it
Mm-hmm.
because the even when it's properly done, it's far richer than you think it should be
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
because it's so dense. And then if you overcook it and cook it until it's brown, then it does get a livery, a bit of a. So when you eat poorly cooked liver, it's a little chalky on the teeth. It's like, and it's just not pleasant. And pigeon and dove and woodcock can get like that if you overcook it.
Yeah, that was growing up with woodcock. It was, I mean, you if you overcooked the woodcock, you were almost gonna they were gonna crucify you. Like they were gonna put you up that like it was forbidden.
Yeah,
It was something you ate very.
Paint the picture a little bit though about your grouse and woodcock experiences as far as like your camp goes. It's your dad and his friends, and then kind of bringing everyone in. Like, what was the culture for you, Ryan?
Well, a lot of times what like by no means was anyone a chef there, but like they did a lot of experimenting with woodcock and grouse because after we do a day of hunting, we'd come back and sometimes eat them or have some from the year prior. But I grew up upland hunting and not like turkey hunting or deer hunting because my dad did that growing up and did so much of it he just kind of got tired of it and found more he was just happier with like walking through the wood. It was more activity for him. He wanted to do something a little busier than just sitting in a tree stand waiting for a deer to walk by. Because I mean that's typically how you hunt deer in Michigan.
You had to keep in shape, keep your mom around.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's what I was introduced to as at a young age rather than deer hunting, and a lot of the meals were over fires or in when the camper was up there. They would had this one recipe that was really good. It was like they would cook down a red wine. They'd put almonds and raisins in it. I wish I could remember it the exact recipe better, but that was probably the best way I've ever had woodcock. That was really really good
With the wine and the
with the wine, almonds, raisins, and I'm too young. I was too young to remember
Hank
it
goes,
completely.
"You piece of garbage."
Yeah. So, out of curiosity, what of all the recipes you've tried with woodcock or grouse, what one is your favorite?
There's probably like 2 or 3 tops.
Simply roasted woodcock. The the camp has a grill that you can run logs through, so you can get a wood fire going, and you can that particular grill can get to 600, 700 degrees.
Wow.
So it would be like a pizza oven.
Yeah.
So one of the things about small birds is that the smaller the bird, the hotter the heat, because what you want is a very, very, very hot fire that can cook the bird quickly and blister the skin without overcooking it.
Okay.
So it's just it's a heat to mass ratio thing, and if you're going through the science of it. And so like a turkey you can cook at 325 or 350 degrees, and everybody's going to be doing that, for the holidays. But that's fine because the bird is, anywhere from 15 to 30 pounds. But if you have a 4 ounce woodcock, you're going to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you need is this intensely high heat. And so if you get that point, what you can get is a breast meat cooked medium, and the skin is starting to get crispy. It never gets like fully crispy. You have to fry for that. Um, and then you just go after it. So I will typically just smear them with oil or butter or bacon fat, salt them well, maybe put some herbs in the cavity, like sage or rosemary or parsley or something like that, just for mostly for aroma. And then you just put them on a platter and serve them with a very simple sauce, like a Cumberland sauce, or um, you can use like, I mean, I wouldn't do a gravy in this particular case because it's too heavy and thick, but something light and acidic to balance out the fact that the woodcock are actually really fatty and rich. I mean, that's the other thing, that if you
Hmm.
don't pluck your woodcock, you may not realize that they get as fatty, or if not fattier, than ducks, and that fat is delicious. I actually rendered some out. If you go on my Instagram
Yeah, no,
page,
no. That was like that little talking about that has been a little thing in my pocket. I've been waiting to pull it out, but I was waiting for a dead spot. But no, that
it's a
uh
little bit of a flex, but yeah,
yeah, it
it came out
was.
pretty good.
No, that's freaking sweet. No, go ahead, dive into it. There's this beautiful picture on his Instagram where you can see this big tube of oil, and it's from woodcock. So go ahead. Yeah, I've been dying to pull that one out.
This is one of those things where you can only do it if you've got a bunch of woodcock,
Yeah,
and
that was the first
and
thing. I was like,
That's
how?
kind of
but
the
it didn't take.
flex. Yeah.
It wasn't even that many, right? It was maybe a dozen.
Okay.
But they were just super fat, and so they had a bunch of fat on them in their body cavities, and some of them were shot up, so that I ended up
Mm-hmm.
processing them in other ways, but I sort of harvested the fat off them,
Okay.
and it's as
Yes.
easy as rendering out duck fat.
So basically, you take the fat off of the bird, and then heat it up, and then the fat kind of, um, not the fat.
Liquefies.
Yeah, but does so we just did. It's going to be in an episode on History Channel, but we were just doing a bear hunt in. I want to ask you something. I got
Hmm.
this is a little off, and then we'll come back. But if I don't want to forget
Sure.
now, so we were doing a bear hunt in Maine, and I shoot a bear, and we're going to render down the fat. So when we cleaned the bear, we took all the fat off, and we're going to render it down, and we are going to learn from the Amish people how to make soap out of it. So we go in, Ryan's laughing. So we go and we meet with the Amish people. Extremely difficult to film it because we can't show their faces. They're good with their voices being picked up by our mics, but they couldn't wear a mic. And there's just all these hurdles to go through, but it kind of made it cool. And we had to be really artistic with how we filmed it. Anyhow, we render down the fat, and he's like, we got to do this outside because it smells. It's like a really bad smell. I was like, okay, so as if everything there didn't already stink, but that's besides the point. So then we bring it outside, and we're like rendering it down in this pot, and I was like apprehensive, wondering what it was going to smell like. And what I noticed was the fat kind of like clumped up, and then like the clear oil kind of came out of it, and then like I guess what I thought was like when you render fat that like everything would melt down, and then that's what it was. But what actually happens is if you're taking the fat and squeezing all the oil out of it, and then like that clumpy stuff remains, and then you kind of separate that. And what I noticed was when we were doing it, I was like, it smells good. And I like leaned over and I'm like smelling it. I'm like, what were they worried about? I think this smells fine. So, would you mind getting it? Actually,
Yeah.
it's in the cupboard where we keep the cleaner, and the bottom cabinet. So what happened was we render it down, and I'm like, this smells good. And he's like, okay, I'll jar it up for us. And then when we jar it up, you guys can come pick it up the next day. And I was like, okay, cool. So we'll just pick it up the next day. So we show up the next day, and I noticed, and you'll see it in a second here. But I noticed that there was like some separation to it, where there was some white stuff near the bottom, and then the clear stuff was all at the top. So I open it up for AJ, because I'm like, or was it Ryan? I got somebody really bad on accident, where I was like,
Ryan.
all right, well, you guys got to smell this because it actually smells good. The guy was wrong. So I open it up, and I take a huge whiff myself, and I almost immediately threw up. I mean, it was a horrific smell. And I was like, what the hell happened overnight that it went from smelling fine to smelling bad? And now when I look at it, this is it right here. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, I'll come a little closer to your camera. But you've got clear for like the top 3 inches, and then it's kind of white, and then dark at the bottom white. So it's like 3 different color phases.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, did we mess it up? One. And is it, because I thought it was all supposed to be clear. So did we not strain it enough? Should we have cheeseclothed it? Is it jacked up now where it's unsavable? Is that what smelled? Like, what are your thoughts? Where did we go wrong here?
Well,
He's like, well,
first of
you
all,
guys are an idiot. No, it's good.
animal fat should be kept cold.
They,
So, I mean,
they told us with this it didn't have to be, because with bear it would never solidify again. That's what they told us. They said bear is different and it would never solidify, and you should never put it in the fridge. That's what they told us. The Amish
they're
people,
wrong.
though. Okay.
They're wrong.
Okay.
I mean,
They probably don't have a
sorry.
fridge.
Sorry, that's just flat out wrong. I mean,
Okay.
It just doesn't make, it's like physics doesn't apply to bears,
Yeah,
like,
right.
no, all fats have a solidification point. All fats do. Period. End of story.
Okay.
So I mean, you can put olive oil in the fridge, and if your fridge is cold enough, the olive oil will set up.
Okay.
Like, bear fat sets up. Trust me, I've done it 1,000 times.
No, I trust you. We're coming in blind here.
So so it could have turned. I don't know how old that fat is, but animal fat turns pretty quick.
It was overnight.
So
It smelled good one day, smelled terrible the next.
that's a little surprising to me. What I'm thinking of, however, is bears are omnivores, and so the smell and the flavor of bear fat and pig fat, and to some extent duck fat, because they're all omnivores, is going to be heavily dependent on what they were eating before you shot them. So if you were hunting black bears over bait in Maine, that'll do it. Um, if you were hunting, a berry eating black bear up in Canada, that's a better quality fat.
Okay.
Or a bear eating acorns or something like that. So,
Then a
but
bear
still,
eating
you never,
donuts.
yeah, donuts or worse, salmon in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
Because then they stink like low tide on a hot day.
Ooh.
But so the smell is going to be completely dependent on what they were eating. And yes, I have encountered bear fat that I can't do it. I can make candles out of it or soap, but I'm not going to eat it. And then I've had other bears where, like, oh my god, the meat's fine, but the fat's really what I want, and it's all entirely dependent on what the animal was eating.
So
In terms of straining it, yes, 100 times yes, because
They didn't
what you
tell us this.
basically are you familiar with cracklins?
No.
You guys are northerners then. Okay, so cracklins, when you do when you're at a hog killing, and you render out the pig fat for lard, what's left over are the cracklins, and you described them when you were describing the process. And those with a little bit of salt on them, or tahini if you're in Mexico, or Cajun spice, or whatever, are some of God's greatest bites in the universe.
wait.
That's that fat, clumpy
yeah.
stuff left over.
Yeah, it's basically the tissue.
Yeah.
And it's cracklins. Like, it's eaten the world over. I'm surprised the Amish didn't eat it. That's a little surprising to me. But
Well, they took it inside.
This one was a character.
they probably ate it.
Yeah. He's like, all right, well, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah,
He was
it's
pretty
amazing.
adamant we left then.
Yeah.
So,
Cracklins.
but if you don't render the fat out enough, there's still a bit of liquid that is involved, and that's like not liquid fat. So that's always going to be on the bottom of whatever jar that you do.
Yeah, that's
If
that
you
white
have
stuff
that,
down there.
Maybe because it actually looks like it's starting to solidify at the bottom. If it's at the very, very bottom of that jar and it's the different color and it looks a little bit more like broth, you gotta set that fat up in the fridge or freezer, remove it with a spoon to another thing, and then chuck the stuff on the very bottom, because that stuff is going to go bad much, much quicker than the fat.
So this was
Because
from September. So are we screwed?
Mhm. It's been at room temperature since September.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not good.
Oh. You got to open it,
We
right?
were duped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I
here,
mean,
It did have a sweet
I'd be
tinge that
suspicious.
first day.
So
It smelled good the first.
Yeah.
It smelled like pork fat the first
Yeah,
day
it
to
did.
me.
Mhm.
we were told we were making soap with this guy, and then he hands us that.
You could still make soap with it.
Okay, well we walked away and we were told that was soap, and
We couldn't pre-produce with them because we couldn't talk to him on the phone. So like, it's not like it's for History Channel. We couldn't like half-ass it, but we couldn't talk to the guy. We had to go like through 3 parties because he can't talk on the phone. Somehow he gets a fax machine for orders, though. Not going to bring that up. But
Yeah.
But anyhow, okay. So the process now is put it in the freezer, scoop off the clear stuff off the top, put it in a separate container. No.
No, the opposite. So put it in the fridge or the freezer so that the fat sets up. And then if there's anything liquid left after that's happened, that's got to get removed before you can even make soap out of it because it's a contaminant to the pure fat. But you might have pure fat in there. I mean, you got to trust the Amish to some extent. I mean, because they probably knew what they were doing in terms of making soap.
He told us that
So,
you put that on your body.
And it smells.
I mean,
I swear, he said you would take that and just rub it on you.
well, number one, that's not soap. Number two, it
This is
will
great.
moisturize your skin. I mean, Native Americans have done bear fat for dry skin for I don't know 10,000 years, and it works.
He told us it cured arthritis.
Yeah, he
He's
did.
wrong.
Yeah.
Nothing cures arthritis. Some things will make arthritis feel better, but bear fat is not one of them.
He'll be heavily fact checked before we.
Yeah, but that's not soap. That's just fat. That's rendered fat.
Right.
I mean, unless if all he did was boil out the raw bear fat, and
That's what
that
he
was
did.
the result.
That's what.
That's just fat. That's all that is fat.
Okay.
And you can absolutely use it as a fragrant skin moisturizer because it'll do that. I use olive oil for that effect,
Yeah.
but it'll work like that. And I mean, what cures, so-called cures your arthritis when you smear that stuff on is you're massaging the parts that have arthritis, and it's going to make it feel better for a little while. I mean, nothing cures arthritis. It's
Right,
like
right.
yes, bear fat dissolves excess bone development into your joints. Yeah, right? Come on.
I mean, I was skeptical.
As you should be.
Yeah. So the process now: put it in the freezer, let it set.
Mm-hmm.
Any liquid, get rid of.
Yes, and if the liquid's there, it's going to be on the bottom because fat's lighter than water.
Okay. What is your thought as far as, and maybe you answered this, I just it didn't seep in like this fat didn't.
Yeah, there's three layers now.
Yeah, there's three distinct layers. You got clear, light white, and dark white.
That tells me it's thinking about setting up. You know how honey does that sometimes?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Okay, so it's not that we did anything wrong then.
I don't think so. I mean, if you were going to eat it, I would have kept it in the fridge. But if you're going to make soap, you're fine.
Okay, cool.
Well, that's good.
Well, that's good. We don't.
My advice is to make that soap smell like something other than bear fat by adding something to it.
Yeah, like essential oils or whatever is what he said. Yeah,
He needed it.
we'll test it. This is I'll tell you what, one way or the other, this is what my mom, sister, and girlfriend are getting for Christmas, so it better be good.
Lucky
Oh,
dog.
well, just leave it as bear fat then.
Yeah,
so like
yeah,
your
yeah.
girlfriend can smell like bear fat.
Yeah,
Oh,
keep the other guys away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a protection plan.
Well, I thank you for going off on that little divergent with us. But I wanted to ask you why I had you on phone. I'm like, shit, this is the one human who's probably going to know exactly what we're in for.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so back to Timbo's. The birds themselves, what was the process of rendering out all that fat? Because with the bear, all we did was cut off big clumps of fat off the meat. It was very easy to do. What was the process for you to be able to do that? And then number two, have you cooked with it yet?
Yeah. So this process works with all birds. I have a video of rendering out duck fat on YouTube, which I can send you the link to. But
Call this
with
podcast Fat Boy.
Yeah,
there
just
you
talking
go.
about fat.
With birds, you want to, basically the Pope's nose, the tail section, the peduncadunk, that has the most fat.
Yeah.
And there will be fat around the gizzard. There'll be fat in the neck. There'll be fat under the skin. So those are kind of all your places where you gather it from. And I do this mostly with fat ducks and geese. And so that's where you're going to get it. And you cut it into little pieces. You don't have to be too careful, just like smallish pieces. And pro tip, if you want to use the cracklins,
I was gonna say you get cracklins. That was my next question.
you do. If you want to use the cracklins and actually eat them, what you want to do is you want to, around the tail, most birds have a preening gland right at the top of the tail.
Yeah.
Don't add that to the mix. Now, contrary to the popular myth, that preening gland does not affect the flavor of the fat later. I've seen this in 100 places, and it's a billion times false.
Really?
It's
Okay.
like, sorry, the preening gland does not affect the flavor of your fat. However, it's a weird texture if you eat it crispy fried.
Okay.
So most people don't like that in their cracklings. So I cut that out. So you'll have the one difference you do between birds and say pork or bear is that you add water. I tend to
Oh,
add
interesting.
about, I cover the fat bits in water, bring it to a rolling boil, and then what that does is that renders out fat. So by the time the water has boiled away, there's enough fat in the pan to render the rest of the fat, which the only thing you have to worry about is you do have to lower the temperature of your burner as you go. So it starts out high and it goes lower and lower and lower. And if you want pastry fat, which is white, so if you want pastry fat, you as soon as there's no more water activity going on in the pan, and you can see if you're used to frying things, and many of you who out there who fry things regularly, you'll know, or you should know, that when you see the fried thing bubble a lot less, it's done.
Yeah.
Because the frying process is
Yep.
is a push-pull.
Yep.
The hot oil wants to get in and the steaming water vapor wants to get out, and that's what causes the sizzle. And so when that sizzle ends, the oil's going to get in. So that's why you pull something that you're frying at that moment.
Is, does it
And
have to
so
do
it's
with
the
the fact
same.
that things normally start to float too? That's another
Yes,
sign.
yes, also true. So the same thing happens with these cracklins, right? So when the cracklins really stop doing anything, pull them out and you're done.
Yeah.
Except if you want to eat the cracklins or make Mexican style lard. So if you want to eat the cracklins, you've got to, and this is where you're gonna have to watch it because the temperature is going to jump real quick. Um, you want the temperature to hit 350 degrees. So that's right around the smoke point of most animal fats. So be there. Don't be watching football while you're doing this.
Yeah.
Like, watch this moment. Like you can watch like half the game, right? But like when you get to the stage where like, okay, here we go, you got to stand there and watch it.
Yeah.
Um, and once the temperature hits about 325, 330, turn off the heat because it's going to keep going up.
Hmm.
And then you're going to have super crispy cracklins that you pull out and then you salt them immediately because they're not gonna accept salt after a couple of minutes. So pull them out, salt them, set them aside. You can do something with them later or eat them right there. And then that fat is going to now turn kind of an amber color. And whenever you get like Mexican fresh lard at a like a Mexican market,
Okay.
you'll see it's kind of brownish.
Yeah.
That's why, because they've heated it up to 350. Whereas pastry fat, which you don't want that caramelization, that stays white as snow. And so that gives you much more neutral flavor. I'm
Oh.
sure this is way more than anybody wanted to hear about.
No.
Animal
This is
fats.
no. This is
Good.
awesome. This is super
Yeah, it's
interesting.
great.
No. Please, no. So then, that's what you did, obviously, with the timberdoodle. Fun fact too, right around that gland on the ducks too that he's talking about on the back, right around there is actually where the feathers are that they use to make flies. A lot of the fly feathers are
really?
like right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So you harvest all that, you render it all down out of the timberdoodle, and then you've got this tube of oil.
It's really just a shot glass in the shape of a shotgun shell.
Okay. How did you cook with it yet? Have you done anything with
I
it?
did.
And
I did. It was so here's your test. If you're dealing with an unknown animal fat, or if you're
yeah,
dealing with like bears, for example, where
it could be good, could be bad from bear to bear.
exactly.
Yeah.
So your nose is not gonna lie. I'm genuinely surprised that smell that bear fat right now.
Oh, dude. We're in
Now
closed
it
space.
could have turned. Like it's been like you said, it's been sitting since September, right?
Are
So
you
it's
gonna do it?
probably turned.
AJ's got it. I tightened the hell out of that because it also had to go in my airport luggage.
Oh yeah, super fun.
Maybe do like the
Oh.
science thing where you waft it.
Yeah, I do the science.
Yeah, waft it. I don't think it's gonna be good. I don't think it got good.
It might have turned.
Smells fishy.
Fishy. Yes. Okay.
You can
So
smell it.
the fishy smell is interesting because
It shouldn't have
that
had
tells me-
access to fish. It should not have where it was,
No. But here's a fun fact. Here's science.
Oh God.
Really?
The science
Yeah, that's wrong.
is
Oh God.
rancid fat takes on the fishy,
Oh,
fishy smells.
Dude, hold on. Woo!
Well, number
Man.
one, you guys are a little weak stomach.
Yeah, we
Like
are.
that's yeah.
Yeah, we are.
but
Oh, dude.
but
AJ, you
rancid
were
all
fine. What's wrong with you?
I didn't think it was that
You
bad.
gag when we're gutting something.
Yeah.
Not that.
There's that smell that I can't do.
I can't. You don't. He doesn't like the irony smell when you're gutting a deer. I
Okay.
like that smell. I bathe in
But
it.
yes.
Serial killer.
Okay, sorry, Hank. We digress.
That's
Okay, so what's your? I also got.
It's rancid.
Yeah,
Rancid. There we go. That's a good.
rancid's a great word for that. So now what?
I mean,
Throw it away.
I'd bake coyotes with it.
Okay. Damn.
We could.
I mean,
Put it in a
you really
frame.
don't want to make soap even with rancid fat because
Yeah.
it's just like that stink is going to hang on it.
But
And so
wha-
you're going to wash
but
yourself and
th-
you're going to smell like lavender and rancid bear fat.
Oh.
I would like to say real quick though, that smells like it did the next morning.
Okay.
So I do want to say that is exactly what I smelled the next day.
Interesting, because that fishy smell is rancidity.
So it got rancid. I wonder if he swapped fats on us.
He might have.
Oh, some trickery.
How did it happen the next day, dude? What?
I
I
Them-
thought the next day. when
them
we had
Amish
it,
are
it didn't
wily.
smell.
No, it reeked the second day.
Okay.
It reeked the second. It smelled just
did.
like that the second day. And here is the problem: the first day it smelled so good that when I went and picked it up the next day, which was that guy's idea, I opened it up to brag to everyone about how good it smelled.
Mhm.
So I took a huge whiff to prove, because everyone thought I was trying to bait him. To prove my point, I took a huge whiff and almost threw up because of it.
It was bad.
Yeah.
So if this was a good fat that's not rancid, what would it smell like?
To me,
then?
it smelled like pork fat the first day.
Yeah,
when we were
pork fat.
cooking it, it smelled like
Okay.
not quite ham, not quite bacon, not
Right.
that good, but softer version
Okay.
of that would be the way I would describe it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, bear fat is structurally the same. Is structurally the same as pork fat, and can have the same range of smells.
It felt I would agree with the experience I had. So it turning overnight when he said he was just gonna.
I don't think it turned overnight. I mean, that's suspicious to me.
I do wonder if he switched it out now.
What if he had bad stuff in the jar, and he's like,
He
"Oh,
coulda done
I'll
that.
just give him some of my. I already have some because they said they do this.
Oh.
What if he's like,
adding to it?
oh, they didn't get that much. I'll help them.
Oh yeah, that's possible.
Oh man, there's too many variables
A
now.
lot of variables.
Well, we can't text him, so there's that. there's that.
And he won't hear us now.
He's like, you guys have weak stomachs for one. I was like, yeah, that.
It's pretty bad.
Listen, Hank Shaw, I feel like if you smelled that thing, you'd be in our boat.
You're like, oh, you can do this with it.
Pretty sure not.
Yeah,
I'm
he's-
a commercial fisherman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Greenway Outdoors is brought to you by Ram Trucks, built to serve. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Savage Arms. Better comes standard. Nosler Ammunition. World's finest bullets, ammunition, and brass. Boss Shot Shells. Superior made and American made. Carlson's Choke Tubes, the only choke tube we've ever purchased. Onyx Hunt. Know where you stand.
If you want to be here, it all starts here. At Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, we have the widest selection of the quality brands you love to get you outdoors. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, our friendly, knowledgeable outfitters will help you find the right products for your next trip. Shop with confidence with our low price guarantee. Plus, club members save even more on great gear with exclusive member pricing. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, voted America's best outdoor retailer.
Legends aren't born, they're created. Introducing Impulse from Savage, the all-new American-made straight-pull bolt-action rifle. Unmatched innovation, fast reloads, maximized efficiency, repeatable accuracy. Welcome to American Straight Pull, only from Savage.
Okay, so going back, with the woodcock, you said you were talking about what to do with it when you're working with a new animal fat and that sort of thing. How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as the flavor of what it added or took away from a meat? What would you rate it 1 to 10?
I think it adds to the character of woodcock, but I think one of the things that is polarizing about that bird is it tastes like something. And so a skinless grouse, everybody loves it because it's essentially a stand-in for chicken.
Yeah.
Whereas a woodcock is never going to be like that. I mean, the only way I can describe to somebody what a woodcock tastes like is to give them examples of other animals that are equally obscure, because and it doesn't help them at all, right?
Right.
So
It's
it's a
only
little bit like it's like a snipe mixed with a dove. I'm like, that doesn't help most people.
sure.
Um,
And it's not every animal's job to taste like a cow or a chicken either. You know what I mean? And
Right.
they can have their own profiles. Sometimes what I'll say is like, whenever I'm trying to describe a meat to someone, I'll be like, describe ham to me, right? You can't, because it is its own thing. So like, you wouldn't describe it as turkey, you wouldn't describe it as chicken, you wouldn't describe it as beef,
pork.
You wouldn't.
Like you wouldn't even describe it as like a pork roast.
No, you
No.
wouldn't. So it's like you just have to let it be its own thing. And I think woodcock is that. And like you said, if you overcook it, it picks up a flavor profile of something people traditionally don't necessarily like, which would be, or they don't think they like.
Yeah,
is
I mean,
that liver.
here's an interesting thing from grouse camp. So the hunters would bring in their birds and we would process their birds to some extent. And then, I mean, anything that we were going to cook, we processed and we sent them home with the rest. But what was fascinating about woodcock was I could put out 10 pounds of grouse and they would eat 10 pounds of grouse.
Right.
I could put out, let's say there were 20 hunters in camp. I could put out 20 whole woodcock, roasted perfectly with a sauce, whatever. And like one per person. And 8 of them would come back.
Really? But that's not enough. No.
So
It's like some people aren't liking it, or some people
they
don't.
will not eat it. It's not that they don't like it, they don't try it.
Oh.
And they're especially, and I have to say, older white men.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna eat that. I don't eat
Yeah.
that
Liver bird.
Where's my steak? I'm like, well, bro, you're not getting a steak. This is what you get. And virtually always it were people who had closed their minds to the possibility that this bird could taste good, and that actually was frustrating to me.
Sure.
I'm happy to say it was a minority.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grow up.
To me, it's like if you don't, and this is also a minority, but it kind of shocked me. Like there was more than a few people who did not eat their birds at all.
What?
So like, I just like to watch the dogs work. I'm like, well, then
Oh.
take them to.
We call those people. It actually has nothing to do with the load itself, but we call those people 28 gaugers. It's like the people we joke about like
You are not wrong. They did predominantly.
I bet they
28
did. I bet they did. You know why? It's like when we were up in actually Maine for a different hunt. We were talking about both Maine hunts, and this episode was in season 1 on History Channel, so you can watch this one now. It was a moose hunt, episode 9. We were up there and we were talking to everyone, and they're talking about like what rounds to use for the moose hunt, and they're like, you don't need anything bigger than a 243, and they're just saying nonsense. And it's like, I could a perfectly placed shot with a 243 kill a moose, sure, but is that the size caliber gun that you should probably be using? No, you know what I mean. So it's like whoever can use the smallest thing and have the hardest situation is naturally just better in every way, and you should know it. And they're just so great. And we can't stand it. So when we were in moose camp, we laid there at night because it's like gets dark at like 5, and we're in bed at night. And we talked for like 3 hours just coming up with different 28 gauge lines, and then we called those people 28 gaugers. We're gonna make a shirt where all the lines are on it, like in a big 28. So you'll probably enjoy it. We'll send you one when we do it.
That's our term.
I like that.
That's our term for those people. I'm sure that happened quite a bit. Well, I guess I can't be sure, but like where you're doing something that's easily critiqued by people, and then, as you said, like you have the complainers or the people who are like, I'm not doing that, I'm not eating that, or I don't eat the birds, that's crazy. Like, was it at least one guy in the group that was always like that? Because it seems like everywhere we go, there's always one person that's got to be like, Oh, you didn't know that? Well, you don't know
The
anything.
know-it-all. Yeah.
Oh, well, those are different types of people, but
Yeah.
they weren't always the same person. So yeah, I mean, anybody who's been to any number of hunting camps knows there's the one-upper,
Oh.
who has done everything that you've done but better.
Yep. He's got a
Um,
2-8 stamped right on his head.
Yeah.
there's the guy who just likes to shoot them. And I wish to say that was a myth, but unfortunately, I've seen it too many times.
Right.
Um, then there's there's kind of everything in between, but those are the two that we're talking about, and they're not always the same person.
Sure.
But they can be, and that makes a special person.
That's the worst person. Yeah. It's interesting too, is because like you're really well educated on what you do. You're very passionate about cooking. You spend a lot of time focused on cooking. You have a ton of experience in cooking, like you were talking about the leg of lamb thing. But when you wanted me to describe you, you just wanted to be called a cookbook, author, and which is obviously like a humble representation of what you've done. And so you're probably, like, by you saying that to me led me to believe you're probably a pretty humble guy. It's tough in those situations when you have that one-upper, or you have these people that think they know everything that don't, and you just want to smash them, but you don't want to break your mold of your humbleness. So you're like in this bind of wanting to be like, dude, your leg of lamb sucks, but you don't want to say it because you don't want to be that guy.
Well, you guys all appear to be under 40.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Ryan's like 12.
there's a shift change occurs as you get older to where you just let them talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was your age, it was definitely a thing of like, no, man, you're wrong. And just like, I don't have the energy for that anymore. It just doesn't help. I would much rather do something and work through action than in words. And if somebody wants to talk for a long time, then that's fine.
Sure.
I can move past it now, and I'm actually really grateful for that, because 20 years ago, nah, I'd be arguing with a glass of bourbon in my hand.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, you do you, man. I'm just gonna go in the
Yeah.
kitchen and clean up.
Eat your liver. You go overcook it all you want. A piece of meat that I'm really passionate about, we've mentioned it a few times. It's my favorite. And it wasn't always. Well, I got into hunting as a kid. My dad taught me deer hunting, and he taught me bluegill fishing because that's what he did. Everything else, the other host on the show, Jeffrey, who right now has a little doll in that chair because he's not here today. So we put this weird-ass doll in his chair. But him and I grew up together. We didn't have a ton. So from the age of 16 on, we just pooled all of our money together so we could buy our first duck boat. We both put in $100. We get a $200 boat that's a piece of crap, but we got it. And then we would just constantly do that to, like, be able to do new outdoor activities. And we found that by splitting the cost of everything, we could accomplish more. So that's pretty much what we've done our whole lives all the way till now, having our History Channel show. And basically, the biggest one that was interesting to us was duck hunting, just because it was so different than deer hunting and bluegill fishing. Like, obviously, you can be so social, you can be talking, all the different species and the possibilities, all the different flavors, all the different stuff. It was just, to me, wanting to get a hands on a duck was just so cool. And we would get them, and the first thing that we would do is, like, we would read online that you breast them. So, like, we're kids. Our dads didn't do this, so, we don't know any better. And we would just, obviously, like, skin them and take out the breasts. You'd have the fat on there, and I would take the fat off of mallards and stuff, because that's what I read in the forums to do, right? That's what I read to do. So I just didn't know any better. And at the time, hunting forums and stuff were really big online, so you're just in this room of, like, everyone saying the same thing, so you're not learning anything new. And also,
were you on that refuge chat? Refuge forum?
Probably.
The most toxic duck hunting place on the planet.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And, like, as a kid, like, trying to learn, I, like, started to see trends. Like, if you ask a question like this, you're gonna get crucified.
Oh yeah, like, hey, if I put my ducks in this arrangement, is this okay? You.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god,
I'm so sorry. No, and that was the truth. And then at the time too, heavy metal, environmental was a shotgun shell company those guys were all paid to be in these forums.
Oh,
So like
man.
everything you said, they're like, well, if you tried the shotgun shell, it'd help. And you're like, I asked about what to soak ducks in. You know what I mean? It's like they would just push the hell out of that ammo in there. And yeah, it was just kind of funny that that's like something you ran into. Anyhow, so I would breast them out and stuff, and I would cook them, and I'm like, this isn't very good. You know, it just wasn't great. And then as I got older, I've taken to knowing a little bit more about the duck, and something I'm so passionate about, and we made a video out of it, is how to dry age duck. And what I found, and again, I am not a chef, so I'm like navigating these waters where you've probably cooked 10,000 ducks and I've cooked 300, you know?
He might rip it apart.
Yeah. And that's what I'm kind of saying is like, I'm willing to be ripped apart. I have no ego, so you can beat me up. But here's what I've taken to doing, and here's what I've noticed. Is you kind of taste like a pondy flavor, pond with a Y at the end. When I was cooking ducks the way that I used to, it just wasn't great. I was probably overcooking them, and I tried bacon wrapped, and then they were a little bit better, but it's just a little bit of an off flavor still. Probably still overcooking them, you know. And then I took to, because like honestly, I like my steaks like medium well. So I know I'm a piece of shit, everyone yells at you for it, but that's like how I like it, especially a ribeye where the fat really gets cooked in. That's what I like. So I thought that's what I wanted with duck and. So anyhow, I read about this one thing about dry aging it. It was an article in a Ducks Unlimited magazine back in the day. So I was like, I'm going to try it. So my mom didn't love this, by the way. But I plucked the entire bird, which was significantly more work, but then you felt really accomplished at the end of it. And then I cut out the spine, and then there was like a gap, like let's say about 4 inches across, up the whole back of it, because I pulled out the spine, pulled out the guts, rinsed it off, patted it dry, and then it looked like a little rotisserie chicken. They look like hell at first, but then I would put it in the fridge on a rack, and basically the open cavity would be facing down on the rack, and the little rotisserie chicken would be sitting up top. And then after like 2 days in the fridge, the skin would kind of tighten up on it, and then it would start to look nice again. It would actually look way better the third or fourth day in the fridge than it would the first day. And I would leave it in there for like a week. And then I would cut off the breast and the leg in a way that they would stay attached by the fat. And then I would soak them in orange juice for like 12 hours. I would take them out, pat them dry, and then I would cook them like that. And I would sear it with the fat down first and then flip it over and do the meat side. And then I would put it in the oven for like 10 minutes, and then it would be like medium on the inside. And it was the greatest thing I ever had in my life. So obviously I couldn't have messed it up too bad. But it was a completely different flavor profile. And so then I tried it without the orange juice to see if it was just the orange juice was the culprit of the change. And it wasn't. It was still way better than it was when I had cooked it, the traditional way before. So I guess for me, I was wondering if you could, I believe I know that the muscle break, what people would say is the muscle would break down. What I read in that article, the muscle would break down and the blood would release. The thing was, I never really saw any blood in the pan. And that's like the thing I never mention or never talk about is like, they say the blood gets released and all of that, and it would drip down in the pan. That's why you put a pan under it. And there would be like 3 drops down there. So it wasn't like blood was pouring out of this thing, even after a week or 8 days. So what is really happening in that process? Did I do it right? Is that smart? Or is there like a pro tip that you would recommend changing?
Sure, we can break this down piece by piece. Pondy flavor in ducks is almost entirely a function of the duck. It's like the bears and pigs we were talking about. They're omnivores.
Yeah.
So duck hunters out there know that there's a huge difference between a bull sprig and a hen spoonie.
Sure.
So the diet of the different species varies dramatically. And then the diet of the same species in different places can vary dramatically. I mean, a great example of that are gadwall, where I used to live in California. So gadwall north of Sacramento are in rice fields, and they're not only perfectly good ducks, they are sought after ducks.
Right.
Gadwall south of Sacramento, where they are in natural marshes, are often called gagwalls because they eat greenery, and that greenery ferments in their guts, and they stink when you cut them open,
Mm-hmm.
and they tend to not put on any fat.
Yeah, we
So it's the
we
same
kind of have the
bird.
greener ones here. We have marsh gadwall.
Yes. So you're going to have your local conditions that determine what is the best species and blah blah blah. So let's just assume that you know that.
Okay.
And I will let me a little side note. There are a few birds that will never steer you wrong. Wood
Mallard.
ducks never steer you wrong. Pintail never steer you wrong. Green and blue-winged teal never steer you wrong, and speckle-bellied goose never steer you wrong.
So mallards
Those
can?
birds, huh?
Mallards can then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've seen mallards eating dead salmon.
Oh. Man,
Yeah,
those little
I mean-
stinkers. I trusted them.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I've shot mallards that had nothing but tadpoles in their gullet. So
Okay.
that said, mallards in general are pretty good, but
Sure.
you
You
never
could get
know.
that one hood rat one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I shot one that was full of acorns and tadpoles.
Okay.
It was okay, but it was good to know, right? So let's just say you shot a good duck, whatever a good duck is in your area,
Okay.
and you did that. The process of plucking and then opening it up and letting it dry out in the fridge is really what you're doing. You're not the blood release is just a bizarre. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Where's it going to go to? It's not like you cut something and it's flushing out. Besides, blood is in the circulatory system, not in the muscle fiber. Like it's just bizarre. So it's just some people who make statements like that just don't understand science, which
Got
is
it.
pretty common. However, what's going on is the bird is in a cold, dry environment. Refrigerators are cold and they're dry. So that's why you have the crisper in your refrigerator because it's less dry.
Okay.
Those crisper things for your
Yeah.
vegetables,
Yeah, at the bottom where you
They're-
can pick.
they're smaller containers. So the moisture that is being released by the thing that's in the crisper is going to stay in that smaller container as opposed into the larger fridge.
Okay.
So if you sit something in the larger fridge, it's going to dry out. And sometimes it's a good thing in the case of your duck. You could actually keep it for maybe 10 days or 2 weeks if you put it in the crisper because it's not going to lose moisture as fast. And the thing about actual dry aging is it's an enzymatic process that requires time. So with beef and any red meat like venison or elk or something, you really are talking 2 weeks minimum for true dry aging. And I actually have a big article about it on the website that goes through all the science, but I'm just giving you the summary right
Yeah,
here.
yeah. No, much appreciated.
And that same enzymatic action happens with birds as well. But the thing about birds, typically, if you hang them in the feathers, you can accelerate it safely if you keep the temperature below 60 degrees. So you can hang at 50 degrees, which is way higher than refrigerator temperature, for quite a while if you have something like a grouse or a pheasant or a skinny duck. See that you get in trouble with ducks in the sense that if it's a nice fat duck,
Fatty,
like
yeah.
a big northern mallard, that fat can go rancid while it's hanging. So I tend to not do traditional hanging like I might with a grouse or a pheasant. So your method actually works pretty well for that. So yeah, you plucked it probably early, and that's fine. But the week-long aging process will make it more tender, and it will concentrate that flavor to make it taste more savory, for lack of a better term. Now, the orange juice is that all you're doing is you're adding sugar and acidity to the meat. It's essentially a marinade, or it's the same process that ceviche works on. It probably turned the exposed meat gray because that's what it does.
Yep.
And I don't love acidifying red meats, but that's a personal choice. Lots
Okay.
of people do.
What don't you like about it?
Because of that gray nature to it.
Okay.
It's yes, it adds some flavor to it, but it also makes it harder to brown successfully because you're denaturing the external layer of the meat with the acidity. That's what it does. So
Right.
like an acidic marinade does not tenderize the interior of any meat, period. End of story. I'm going to say that one more time. An acidic marinade does not tenderize the interior of any meat.
He's like,
So
I've
if
heard
you're
enough
out
of
there
it.
and you believe that, it is 100% false.
Okay.
Salt A brine does penetrate the interior of meat, but what that does is it allows a piece of meat to retain more moisture when you cook it. All meat loses moisture when it's cooked.
Sure.
Brined meat loses less. So that gives you that, it's not necessarily more tender, but it's less dry. Marinades only affect the outer layer. It doesn't mean they're worthless, but you cannot take like a deer shoulder and marinate it and then put it on the grill and eat it medium rare. Like, good luck. It's not going to work.
Right.
So the presence of the orange juice, it adds flavor, it adds that orangey flavor, it adds sugar, which caramelizes, and it kind of counteracts a little bit the wetness of the outside of the meat, which that hurts your ability to brown, but sugars brown much easier. So you kind of got to push pull there, and that's why it kind of ended up real nice. Now your fillet method, actually my ex does that method, and she loves it. I don't.
And you're like,
typically
that's
do
why I
that.
left her. No, just kidding.
No, can't say that was it. But she does that method, and she's an excellent duck hunter, and she swears by it because for the same reason you do, because you've got that leg breast combination. It's attached by that fat in the center, and you can put a brick or a bacon press over it and keep it flat. So it's a good solid method. I just don't do it because I tend to make a whole dish of just legs or a whole dish of just breasts. So it's just the difference in how I cook. There's no right or wrong about it.
Okay.
That's pretty interesting.
It's super interesting. So the process that I'm doing is drying out what's actually happening in my refrigerator, just to circle back, is it's becoming more tender and the flavor's becoming more savory.
Yes.
But there's no real change, like, other than that?
You would notice if you set it up where your humidity was right and your temperature was right, you could dry age a duck for 3 weeks.
Okay.
You can't really do that in a regular fridge.
No,
if you had something like a dry ager, or if you had your own setup, you damn right.
We gotta get one of those.
It's amazing.
We gotta get one of those sponsors.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I actually have one, and I like it a lot.
Which
I bought
one?
it. It's the dry ager. It's
Okay.
just the smallest one because that's all I could afford. But it works really well, and I like it.
How small is the smallest one?
He goes, a little bigger in that room you're
it's
in.
like it's about the size of a
apartment
like a
refrigerator.
really big dorm fridge.
Okay, I knew it.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it's still decent.
Yeah, you couldn't put a whole deer in though, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Unless
No, you could cut up a doe and put it in there.
Question for you too. People used to, like, this is what I've heard. One of the things that was in those forums back in the day, and I never had the balls to do it, but they said on like the colder months or whatever, they would just tie the head of a duck to a string, hang it outside, and when the duck rotted off, like the head fell off and the body fell, then it was done being dry aged. What is the mindset and philosophy behind that? No, I'm not kidding. That's a normal like, you've heard it, right?
Riddle me this, Batman.
Yeah.
Was that person saying that he did it?
Yes.
Or was he saying that somebody else did it?
He was saying he did it his whole life, and anyone who doesn't do it's a piece of garbage. He was a 28 gauger through and through.
Classic. Okay, so
but I heard that a lot of places. It was also on Duck Dynasty. It was also
it's very rare to hear that someone actually does it, because the usual is I heard some other group here, Upers or French or Cajuns or whatever, that they do it. So
you've heard it
if
though.
Yeah, for sure. If your conditions are right, yes, it works. It's a thing that the English call high game, and
we're low game over here.
It's essentially controlled rot, and it can go haywire if your temperatures are above about high 50s. Like listeria starts to form at 60 degrees. So if your temperatures get above 60 degrees, that's bad. That's really bad. It is super no bueno. But if you're hanging around like like I'm in St. Paul right now, and the temperatures are perfect for hanging and dry aging because it's going down about freezing at night, maybe a little lower, and then the days are in their 40s. So that's your sweet spot for doing that sort of thing, where the bird's not frozen solid because you got to avoid that too,
Right.
and it's not getting so hot that you're going to get really nasty bacterial infections. So yes, that's real dry aging. The feather, leaving the feathers on keeps the skin supple. So if you, one of the things you notice in your week long duck aging is that the skin gets pretty dry
Mm-hmm.
and it gets blotchy. So that works for about a week. But if you were to do that for 2 weeks, you're going to run into some issues
Okay.
because the skin's going to get just too dry, which is why you keep the feathers on. So one thing that we have done in the past is to hang the birds,
Whole.
and I use the term hang loosely because we really just put them in the beer fridge.
Okay.
Hole it in the feathers for 3, 4, 5 days. And then that's at refrigerator temperature.
Okay.
And then we pluck, and then we might keep it in the kitchen fridge for another 3, 4, 5 days.
When
So you
when
might
are you
get a
gutting
2 week
them?
period
When are you gutting?
when you pluck them.
So
They're holing in the feathers for 3, 4, 5 days in the refrigerator. Then you take them out and pluck them and gut them and get them ready like you did. And then they can sit in the kitchen fridge for another 3, 4, 5 days.
Okay. Yeah, Ted Nugent told me that he takes the birds whole, hangs them by the neck in his walk-in cooler, and leaves them in there for 10 days. And then he said he does that with doves. He said he does that with everything.
Wow.
Does not gut them.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
what
you
I'm saying.
can't do you're going to get in trouble with turkeys and geese
Okay.
because
they're bigger.
They have enough thermal inertia, which is another, meat science term, that they're going to retain so much heat that if you don't gut them, you're in trouble.
So it only really works with the small ones then.
I don't know. I mean, it works with kind of every game bird in America that's smaller than a goose or a turkey. So
A big fat mallard would be fine.
yeah, I mean, if it's a really fat mallard, I might be a little nervous about it because um, if you kept it at refrigerator temperature, you're fine.
Okay.
But if you're doing it like classic hanging temperature,
Yeah.
like 50, 55, the fat could go off on you, and that's a
Okay.
shame.
What's a sign
So
where
I
like
want to
you
I want
screwed
to I want
up?
to say one thing about Ted, and the only thing I want to say about Ted Nugent is that he's incorrect about doves.
Okay.
Because it's one dove in 1,000 that's more than a year old. So the thing about dry aging is you dry age things like that specifically to tenderize them. I have eaten at least 1,000 doves. I've never found a tough dove.
Me neither.
So I'm not saying he's a terrible human being for that, but it's useless. There's no need to.
Okay.
I've had tough quail, but I've never had tough doves. So that's a case where, sure, fine, but it's not doing you any good.
Okay.
Not like a duck or
So-
a pheasant.
So doves clean right away.
I do, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Pigeons too.
Do you soak them in anything specifically?
No. Doves are really clean and mild. I like them a lot.
Yeah, me too.
They're good.
We can't hunt them in Michigan, if you can believe that.
I can. Do you want to know why?
They put it up to a public vote, and we didn't win. I know that.
Yes, but so that is part of. I'll send you a piece about this. I wrote about it actually.
Sick. Yeah.
It's not specific to Michigan. It's specific to Michigan to the northeast. So about 120 years ago, there was a guy named William Hornady, like Hornady bullets.
Yeah.
And I believe it's actually the same family.
I was gonna say that's the right name.
Which is ironic.
Yeah.
But this is the guy who is best known for putting an African pygmy in the zoo. Yeah, a person. He put a person in a zoo. So like
It's a
it's
little
not
rough.
exactly the most enlightened human being on the planet. However,
Jeez.
people are complicated. So the other thing that he did is he was he was one of the strongest advocates for sportsman-like hunting. So on his downside is he viewed Africans as not quite human. On the plus side, he is one of the guys responsible for seasons and bag limits in the end of commercial hunting. So part of that,
Can't win them all, I guess.
I know, part of that
Yeah.
campaign, and then here's where we get to his dark side again, is part of that campaign was to make doves a songbird because, and I quote, greasy Italians, rednecks, and uppity Negroes were shooting all the songbirds. So basically, it was his attack on hunting doves was explicitly racist.
Yeah.
And so he got everyone in the Northeast to declare the dove a songbird, and it extended out into kind of greater Yankeedom, which includes Michigan.
Yeah.
And so to this day, the origin of the dove hunting ban in that part of the United States is rooted in some really serious, explicit racism, and it's fascinating to me.
We should make that. We should really make that case in court and be like, if we can't hunt doves, you're racist, Governor Whitmer.
I mean,
it's really interesting because it was all about like keeping non-rich white guys from hunting.
Wow,
that's
we're non-rich white guys.
That's right. Exactly. Same here.
Yeah. Dang.
And so I mean,
it worked.
There's also
yeah. It worked.
So let's take that aside for a second. But also, like I actually was lucky enough to be on the very first Minnesota dove hunt 20 years ago.
Nice.
When they reopened the season in Minnesota, it was okay. Like that's the thing. It's like the northern tier states don't have good dove hunting because doves don't like the cold.
Right.
Now Eurasians do.
Mm-hmm.
The Eurasian collared doves don't care. I see them around here even in the wintertime. But the mourning doves, they're out of here.
Yeah.
First touch of cold. So even if you had a season, I don't know. I wouldn't go to Minnesota or Michigan or Wisconsin to hunt doves. And
September,
maybe get one day.
In September, though, we would rack them up here. Yeah, we have.
Would you though?
We have a huge. We have a pretty high population here.
I feel like
it's not like the other states where they're sitting over a sunflower field and shooting 50 of them every day. But yeah. I feel real confident that I could at least put a couple strings of 15 a day.
You'd walk away happy with what you got.
Yeah, it might be the area we're in, but we also we've experienced every section of Michigan and what it has to offer, so we would know where to go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they're definitely here for a while. They're probably here.
For me, I go to like Oklahoma or Texas or Arizona.
I'm sure it's way better. Yeah, I'm sure it's way better. But I think it's also the fact that like we see them enough that it upsets us that we can't shoot them.
Yeah.
I believe you. Can you shoot Eurasians?
Eurasian is that a pigeon?
It's the Eurasian collared dove.
I know rock doves are pigeons.
Yes. So the Eurasians are, I'm sure you have them because some chucklehead let them loose in Florida in like the 1970s, and they have kind of invaded the rest of the United States.
What do they look like? I'm going to look it up.
Like a dove. They're a big dove. They're a big dove. They're lighter in color, and they have a black band on the back of their necks. And they kind of sound like dying penguins. They're like, ah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And they hang out. Hang out by structure, so they occupy the same biological niche as pigeons.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I don't know that I've ever seen this before.
They're around. I've seen them in Michigan. I've seen them around Lansing.
Maybe
I think maybe it's like
for a mourning dove.
Yeah, they I'm like that's a big mourning dove. That could have been
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that could have because I've seen mourning doves where I'm like holy hell, and then it probably wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, but I didn't know it because I couldn't shoot them and look at them. You know what they say? Shoot them and then figure out what it is. You know.
That's the John J. Audubon method, isn't it?
We do have an open season on pigeon.
We do. Yeah, we do. We can shoot rock doves here though. We can shoot pigeons. So you can like.
I love shooting pigeons because
I
love eating.
Pretty
pigeons.
Good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh well, we did an episode. The episode sucked actually, but it was like season 2 or 3.
I think it was 2.
It was rough, man. We couldn't buy a pigeon. Like no matter what we did, everywhere we went, it just didn't work out. But if you can make friends with a farmer, and especially the dairy farms, they're loaded with them. They're loaded with them.
Yeah, I mean, I love pigeons. Like I just because they age well too. Actually, I will hang them for a couple 2-3 days because pigeons, unlike doves, can live a long time.
Okay.
Like a standard pigeon, it's not crazy to get a 2 and 3, 4, 5 year old pigeon.
Wow.
So you hang those guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they pluck super easy. Like there's zero reason to not pluck a pigeon because it's just the feathers practically fall off them.
The Greenway Outdoors is brought to you by Ram Trucks, built to serve. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, your adventure starts here. Savage Arms, Nosler Ammunition, Bosch Shot Shells, Wilderness Athlete, fuel for the rugged, Tracker Boats, fish the finest, Eagle Fishing, designed for the savvy angler, Rufus Teague Barbecues, Snacks, and Spices, Rectech Grills, it's more than a grill, it's a way of life, Sea-Doo, make your own waves, LEM Products, motivating people to hunt, process, and prepare their own food, Quiet Cat, the leader in electronic bikes for hunting, fishing, camping, and exploring. Consistency. That's what you aim for with every practice shot. So when you're out in the field, you get that same consistency every shot. With Carlson's choke tubes, consistency is what you'll get. Our choke tubes are long-lasting, high quality, and made right here in the USA. Carlson's choke tubes, pattern tested, hunter approved. Find out more at choketube.com.
Are you anxious to get going? Knowing that the clock is ticking and time truly is the most precious commodity in the world? Then you, my friend, are in good company.
Last question for you, because we've been drilling you. Sorry.
The answer is B.
Okay.
Good.
No
You're
shit.
right.
All right, Ryan, you heard him. You're fired. No, I'm just kidding. It's like, what? Okay, so for a deer, let's say you shot a let's say you're Jeffrey, and he just shot a 160-pound doe, and she ended up being about 5.5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Whitetail. He could hang it for 7 days. Do you reckon that's how long he had? Then he butchered it in a cooler, in a controlled cooler at 40 degrees.
A little warm, but okay.
Yeah, it's just that's how it worked out. But is that what you? So let's say, I guess what's the ideal situation? Someone needs to know is like, if I can only hang my deer for 4 days, does it make a difference, or does it have to be 2 weeks? Does it have to be if I can do 2 days? Is that better? Is it because a lot of people too is like we shot our moose in the field. And we had to break it. We had to debone it to get it out. You know what I mean? It's like that's what we had to do. So I guess there's 2 questions then. 'Cause number one, first question is, talk to me about the aging process of a deer. What happens, day 1 to 4? Is there a point in doing it if we only got 2 days? Is it like every minute counts? Or is it like if you can't hit 10 days, don't bother? And the second question is, for people like us who got a moose, and you're like, hey, man, I had to debone it in the field like an hour after I shot it. It barely got into rigor mortis. What am I looking at? What can that person do after the fact to try and help?
Okay. Whew. All right. So
Yeah, there's 2 big different.
Strap yourself in.
Yeah.
So number one, the let's deal with short-term aging. So if you can only age a short period of time, you absolutely want to get the animal through rigor mortis, which can take 48 to 72 hours. So if you can hang the animal for 48 to 72 hours and then butcher, that's fine. The other thing is, if you're in the field and you don't have that opportunity, cut the animal into very large pieces. Like quartering it is pretty normal. And then if you can, and this is a reach and this is an ask, but
You're gonna say keep the bone attached.
You asked me about the ideal.
Yeah.
So the ideal would be to use a bone saw and cut the backstrap from the hips to the end of the backstrap over the ribs and keep it on the bone. That would be the ideal. Obviously it's hard to do if you're in the middle of nowhere. It's hard to do with the moose, but if you have like ye old whitetail in Michigan, that's a really good thing to do. And I'll tell you why. Because if you are going to age the animal, especially if you're going to actually dry age for 2 weeks or longer. By keeping everything on the bone, you have less meat exposed that later has to get trimmed off. So with the case of the backstrap, you've got the top of the ribs and the spine that are going to protect the backstrap while it ages. And then when you are done aging and you cut it off the bone, you have that very fresh cut there that's already dry aged. So you're in great shape. So your meat loss is going to be significantly lower if you're going to do that. Another point, and this is important, because space is often at an issue, the only things that really truly benefit from dry aging are those cuts that you then cook medium to medium rare. So that means backstrap and hind legs. And I'm not talking shanks. Shanks, shoulder, ribs, neck. None of that really truly benefits from dry aging. It's not going to hurt it, but why? Because you're going to slow cook those anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The entire point of dry aging is to tenderize and to increase flavor. So yeah, sure, you could dry age, like a fur on deer in 30 degrees, 31 degrees, and you'll be fine. I mean, go for it. But that's not everybody. So if you have to make choices, dry age those cuts that are going to get cooked medium rare.
Okay.
So
your
so
prime
you've got
cuts
the 1 or 2
basically.
day. Huh?
Your prime cuts basically.
Exactly. So you've got the 1 or 2 days to get it through rigor. You've got, then you can go as long as you dare, depending on your conditions. And then if you have to make decisions, work with your prime cuts. Now, I want to, your situation. The other option, and this happens a lot, especially if you're in, if you're lucky or you're not in the backcountry or whatever. If you can get on that animal right when it dies and start butchering then, it has the awesomely named meat science term of hot boning, which my inner 12-year-old always laughs at.
Yeah, no, I get
but what it means is that you're cutting an animal before it gets into rigor.
It took Ryan. It took Ryan a while to get
it.
And he's married. I'm just kidding.
Oh, ow. Painful. Anyway,
so you get on him before rigor mortis.
Yes. So, and this is exceptionally important with the backstrap. So, because if I'm in the backcountry, there's just no way that you're going to be able to, stand there because there could be grizzly bears, and slowly butcher this animal out in the middle of a field or a forest or something. However, if you can get on that thing quick, get that backstrap off really quick, and then you can take your time, because it doesn't matter if the hind legs or the forelegs go into rigor and then you butcher them 2 days later. They're on the bone. They're fine. But if you cut meat that's in rigor, you get what's called shortening. So if you can imagine holding your arm out and stiffening your arm, like lock your elbow, and then now imagine cutting your bicep right at the elbow. It's going to curl up like a Venetian blind. That same thing happens if that muscle is in rigor mortis. So there's a snapback, it's a shortening, and sometimes you can even see it. Usually you can't, but it happens. And what that does is that meat is then going to be tough forever. I mean, you can cook the hell out of it, but why do you want to cook the hell out of a backstrap? So this happens a ton with wild pigs. Like, people shoot wild pigs and like, why is that backstrap tender? Well, first of all, the pig was probably 6 years old. Second of all, you cut the pig when it was in rigor. And so your answer is, if that happens, because it happens to the best of us, is make schnitzels and cutlets, Chinese food, or chicken fried steak, or like something else where you manually tenderize the backstrap. So that's the answer to that problem. But that's an issue that happens a lot. And so what I do is I have historically hunted in warm places. So I'll get that backstrap off and the tenderloin, like right off the bat. I will quarter the animal and then just keep that on the bone for a couple, 2-3 days in a cooler. The another thing that drives me batty is when they bury things in ice water. Don't do that. That's
Okay.
a bad idea. Cold, yes. Wet, no.
Got it.
Um, so you keep the quarters or the big chunks cold for as long as you can stand it, and then you do the fine work maybe when you get home, and you're always going to be in good shape no matter if you can keep something cold and dry, you're always going to be fine. So I mean, sometimes it's the back of your truck if it's the conditions are right. But yeah, you have a lot of leeway in terms of getting good things out of your meat, provided you can either get on it immediately before it gets into rigor or let it get through rigor. And then kind of the icing on the cake is to actually dry age something for 2 weeks or more.
When do you know it's out of rigor?
It's usually 2 to 3 days. So I just, one way you can tell is if you can bend the joint of a leg.
Okay.
If you can't bend the joint of a leg, it's in rigor.
I'll be the first to admit I was taught wrong then. I don't remember where I acquired this information, but I was told you wait at least until it's in rigor mortis, because then at least the meat is pulling against the bone at that process.
That sounds like an efficiency thing.
No,
Yeah,
I did, but that's wrong. So if you're to get an animal, like just I'm more or less reiterating for my personal self right now to make sure I understand, because I'm trying to put all this in the memory bank right now. So you shoot something big, you're in a warm area or you're in the backcountry. First thing you do is, before it gets to rigor mortis, get the backstrap out, get the tenderloin out, and then gut it. Everything else after that, you can take your time.
Well, I mean, you could gut first, but I mean, be pretty quick.
Yeah, you only have so much time. I mean, they get in rigor mortis decently quick, and then once it's there,
Yes.
it sounds like you're in trouble. So get that out. So I would even say for a whitetail hunter in Michigan, then, if you're gonna just take your, if you're either gonna, a lot of people here take their deer in to be processed. I do not, but let's say you did. Then if you got your backstrap out right away, that might be the smart move.
Mm-hmm.
Like the second you got it, most people take their tenderloins out right away anyways, because they know, that it gets, that for what, they know they dry up and become nothing overnight pretty quick, if they're hanging. So, get those out before rigor mortis sets in. So when the animal's still loosey goosey or hot boning, as Ryan's going to learn about, but do that. Then as far as the hanging process goes, if you can, let's say you didn't find him until like Ryan's first year. We found him a couple hours later, so he's in full riggy. So at that point, then the best case scenario for Ryan is probably still cut the tenderloins out, because they do seem relatively hidden from this process. Like, it seems as though they've found their way away from the problem.
They have it, but they're so tender you barely notice.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, just in my experience, that's what I say. So for the best case scenario then would be to hang it in either a cooler or outside in the cold weather as long as possible, with the fur on. And you're saying that 2 weeks would be fine.
If the fur on it's got to be right around freezing to do it with the fur on. If it's above that, the fur is going to insulate enough, so you typically you skin the deer and then hang it.
So skin the deer and then hang it would be better.
I mean, in most situations, there are opportunities where you can keep it fur on, but that insulates the meat quite a bit. And
let's say you're going to put it let's say we have a refrigerator, a walk-in cooler up north, where we hang all the deer. And normally
is it 33 or 32,
yeah,
then you can hang it. Then you can do fur on, gut it, of course.
Yeah, so gut it, fur on, and leave it as long as you can. The last part of that question we were unpacking was, is 3 days, like if you only have 3 days, is obviously let's not use 3 days, because I know that's the other side of rigor mortis. The goal is to get on the other side of rigor mortis for sure. I know that.
Yes.
Is there a difference between day 4 and day 12 then? Where you might,
yes.
Okay, so
yes.
every day counts.
Ish. There's not a lot of difference between day 4 and day 8.
Okay.
It's once you get to about 10 days that people can taste a difference in a dry aged animal. And all of the tests done with beef and with venison in Europe, because you can buy venison in Europe, show that 10 days is where you start to really be able to pick up a dry aged flavor. 14 days, a lot of people really, really like it. 21 days is generally considered the prime. And then once you get past 21 days, you get into a whole different realm of kind of
Possibly
funky
mold.
cheesy,
Yeah.
which I happen to like, but it's going to be one of those deals where, um, I mean,
You
you're
can
going to
get a
get
little
some people
sketchy.
that, yeah, I mean, and then the longer you dry age, the more tight your setup has to be. Like it really has to be proper humidity, proper temperature. And then, the longer you dry age, the more rind and the more waste you're going to have. So I dry
Because
aged.
it becomes like a hardened shell of
Yes,
dried out.
exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And then this is also the argument for keeping things on the bone, because when you take it off the bone, like everything that's exposed is going to get, junked.
Yeah.
It's going to look disgusting and blah blah blah, but underneath it will be amazing.
Okay. Okay. Um, the amount of time, like let's say Jeffrey, he's got access to that cooler, 32, 33 degrees. It's just a standard walk-in cooler, not sure on the humidity. Somebody like that in that situation happens to have a walk-in cooler, happens to have the opportunity to hang it, but they probably don't like funky cheesy and they got to feed it to their wife and kids.
2 weeks.
Got it.
10 to 14 days.
Okay, 10 to 14. Okay. That's what I want to know. This was so much fun. This was so much fun.
We should do quarterly check-ins.
Yeah, just like
make sure we're not stupid with the meat.
Get your cell phone number and call you in a panic sometime. You know what's up. Hey, this is
it wouldn't be the worst. Wouldn't be the worst text I've ever gotten. I will occasionally get text of, "I just ate this mushroom. Can you tell me what it is?"
Whoa.
You know what's funny too is like there's so much wrong with the information you find. I like really trust you. Kellen did a ton of research on you. I watched some of your stuff, and I like feel really safe. Like I feel like I'm asking the person who knows the right answers, like at the end of a quiz, like you're the teacher right now. But I swear to you, there might be more disinformation on this than anything else in the world. Like
there's a lot.
Well, it's that 28 gauger mentality. I know you don't. I know.
I have been called the perfect combination of Severus Snape and Alton Brown, and I'll own that.
Okay. Yeah, I just
Alton Brown. Okay.
I just don't,
because I'm into the meat science, and I've seen enough fools where I don't suffer them quite as well as I used to.
I think one thing too is a lot of people got information passed down from like their grandparents or something like that. It's kind of like
true.
It's kind of like in Michigan, like growing up at the deer camp that I was with my dad and his buddies. They were super anti-shooting does, and I was into the information of like, okay, well, what I'm reading is we need to harvest does. We got a 50-to-1 ratio in Michigan. This is wrong. There's a lot of errors going on. But the reason I was like, why do you guys believe this? And it was because, their fathers, so my grandparents, they were at a time when deer were almost wiped out in Michigan.
Yep.
So you didn't shoot does because you wanted the population to keep going. So there was like a taboo around shooting doe. So my dad and his buddies grew up in an era where their parents were like, you shoot a doe, you're walking home, you better be sure there's antlers. So then like that like gets ingrained in them. So then when I come up and I'm like, yo, we should have like a earn a buck program in this camp because we are not shooting enough does. They're like, you're a monster. And obviously they're all on board now, and they've all learned that, but it was like turning that, like changing the way they think because of old data. And I think that maybe cooking and dealing with meat is similar, where some things were done out of necessity, like where they didn't have access to this or didn't have access to that, so they had to do this because this is what they had. And I think that a lot of that information got passed down, and then there's also always idiots, right? So then you've got a mix of dumb people passing down information to dumber people, and then it like inseminates, and then like there hasn't been a Hank Shaw to come along and be like, hey, dummies, this is actually how you do it. I've cooked a lot more leg of lamb than you have. So for that, we thank you for coming in and saying, no,
Yeah.
dummies, don't do that.
No, I appreciate it. And I think you make a really good point about this is really true in all of life. It's true with relationships. It's true with any area of study that you're interested. It's true with everything, is that you have to be open to new data. And there's a tendency for human beings to make a decision or say that a thing is true and then just stick with it. It's kind of umpire syndrome, where we can all see that
Oh,
the
yeah.
umpire called a strike when it was really a ball.
Mm-hmm.
But the umpire's made his decision. So he's going to stick by it, even though he probably knows he's wrong.
Yeah.
And you see this with human behavior a lot. And a sign of an adult is like, I believe this. Well, here's some new data. Huh.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to adjust my belief. And then that takes courage. And not everybody has the, I don't know, I guess courage
Humble.
to change the way they think. I mean, if you look at some of the things that I said and wrote about in 2007 when I started to do this publicly, it's different now because I've learned things. And I will occasionally get people like, well, but you said this. And I'm like, yes, I did that. I said that 13, 14 years ago, and I've learned more since then.
Right.
So that's a process that I think everybody needs to go through no matter what situation you're in. And it's one that you have to actively, mindfully do.
100%. You know, for us, it was always, I guess the way I would explain it is like I probably have significantly more hunting experience in us as a team than almost anybody that we encounter, just simply because we do it all the time. But at the same time, we do so many different things in so many different areas. You know, we could be axis deer hunting in Hawaii. We could be python hunting in the Everglades. We could be, woodcock hunting in northern Michigan. We could be doing, fishing, spear fishing for invasive lionfish. You know, we do all these different things. So we've done everything a little bit. So we're not experts at anything. So it's made us pretty inquisitive when we work with someone who's like, this is what they do. They hunt lionfish in Florida. Like, that's what they do.
We're naturally put in a position where you have, like,
we're always asking
you
questions.
always have to ask.
Yeah, I'm always asking questions. And that's like, maybe that was God's way of making sure that we, never got a big head or anything else. Because like I said, no ego here. Tell me if I'm wrong, and here's why. And even when I went out on the edge a little bit with the duck thing, I'm like, here's what I think. And you're like, close, and that's part of it. But we really enjoyed this conversation. This is the longest podcast we've ever done.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We normally do 45 minutes to an hour. This was an hour and 40 minutes, and I could keep going. But we will let you go. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. I appreciate hanging out with you. I like to meet you in person. I like to do some. Maybe we can do something for History Channel or something. Do one of our at the end of every one of our episodes. I don't know if you've gotten to see our main show yet, if Kellen sent you any, but we do a cooking segment at the end of every episode. But it might be fun to have you in as a guest one time and teach me a thing or two.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Oh, and side note, I actually, and they don't pay me to say this either, but I actually shoot those Nosler bullets.
Good for you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Nice. I'm glad to hear it. They really are the best, so it makes a whole lot of sense. What's your caliber of choice then?
I shoot a 270, and I shoot the Nosler trophy grade because it kills things dead.
I like it. You're darn right it does. The 270 is such an interesting round because they've invented all these rounds around it. The 6.5 Creedmoors and all these different around that size. And at the end of the day, the ballistics are just so impressive on the 270 Winchester. It seems like no matter what they do and bounce around it, it's just a wildly effective round. It really, really is.
Especially in 130 grain.
Yep.
So I pretty much only shoot the 130 grain because I find it shoots better than the 150.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where I've shot several elk with 130 grain 270, and it was fine. They tipped over and died.
Yeah. Speed kills.
And yeah, I actually a hunting guide in Eastern Oregon. That's all they shoot are 130 grain 270s. And I'm like, oh, should I bring 150? He's like, no, the 130 is going to be actually better. So I trusted him because, again, there's a case where he shoots way more elk than I do.
Right.
So I'm in the position where, like, I'm asking him, like, okay, he knows this better than
sure.
I do. So
I've gotten really into for elk, for buffalo, for moose, for pretty much everything. My go-to round is the 28 Nosler. which a lot of different gun manufacturers make. It would be similar to a 7mm. It's just really, really fast, and they make a smaller 160 grain because it kind of falls under like the 300 Win Mag size. A lot of them are 175 grain and that sort of thing, and I go down to the 160 to get those 3,300 feet per second ballistics, which is insanely fast for such a big chunk of lead. But same thing, we shoot the AccuBonds, and I guess just a word from advice from us to you: if you're ever gonna buy one gun, if you had one gun to hunt everything in the world with for the rest of your life, I would recommend the 28 Nosler myself. So just
I don't know. I've killed a lot of things at
270.
270.
Yeah. And you probably
I've killed everything from.
You still will.
I think the biggest thing I've shot with it was a nilgai.
Okay.
Either nilgai or elk. I mean, I guess they're about the same size.
Sure.
And then I've shot everything down to a jackrabbit with it.
Oh wow. Headshot, I hope.
I clipped the top of its head off, so
Nice.
I was very lucky on that one.
That'll do it. You click the top of the head off on the jackrabbits and the top of the heart off with the elk, and you're good to go.
Yeah. The only thing I might be a little nervous about with would be like a moose or
Sure.
a musk ox with the 270.
Well, if you go there, 28 Nosler. That's your
28 Nosler. Okay,
Yep.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. It's funny. Like a lot of the other gun manufacturers now outside of Nosler are making it. I know mine is a Savage. Obviously, that's our gun company that we work with, and they have a 28. They have a lot of guns that they make in the 28 Nosler that are chambered in that. And we're actually going to be shooting. We're going to Wayne State University to do a ballistics test, and the idea behind it will be to show people, like when they're making the choice of what bullet to use when they go on a hunt, whether I'm going to be doing whitetail hunting, I'm going to be doing muskox hunting, what type of bullet, whether it be a ballistic tip, whether it be the AccuBond, like you're shooting, that sort of thing. So we're going to be using that gun to shoot the ballistics gel just to see all the different types of impacts and what it does, so that when someone,
cool.
that they'll be able to see it visually and like, oh, that's why I'll choose that bullet for that situation. But those ballistic tip bullets and the 130 are really, really, really effective. Matter of fact, Mason from Nosler, who's the head of marketing there, we did a pronghorn hunt with him, and he swears by the 308, the 270, and the 28 Nosler, and he just used a 308 with a ballistic tip, super light bullet, and the ballistics are just so good on it that it's like super flat shooting. Same thing though, if you're gonna go big, the 28 Nosler, just look into that. I think you'll dig it.
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
good.
I will.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again. We had a blast. It's a great podcast, and
It was awesome.
We'll keep in touch. If there's anything that we can do for you, let us know. Like I said, we're gonna be launching our second season here on History Channel. It'll air next September. We've already filmed 3 episodes, but we'll be doing some cooking segments and stuff like that. And if there's anything where our brand can coincide with your brand or something like that, please let me know.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to come and cook some stuff.
Awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Well, you have a wonderful day. We'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Thanks, Hank.